Welcome to the Art and Hustle Gallery of Conversations / Docsunne DopeChick's journey. I am super excited that we can do these weekly inspiring conversations there.
I agree. I am excited for our time together. I feel like we always have some type of epiphany or part of our conversation that's like, oh, it's new. I didn't think about that.
Yes, like the bull story. So one of the things I love, I'm not sure if you do, is that after I edit these podcasts, I sit on my couch and I watch it on the smart TV. And that's when I get majority of my epiphanies and revelations and connecting the dots. Is like I'm sitting there on a couch like every other person, watching it like a spectator. And that's when I have that outer body experience and be able to hear myself fully. Because now I'm not editing it in front of the computer and still sitting and fixing it. I'm just sitting there like, this is finished and this is what everybody's going to see.
Yeah, it's you're no longer the creator of it. You're now the participant, which is huge. It's funny you say that because that's how I feel when I watch back a lot of my podcasts too. Like while I'm editing somebody else, and I was like, did I miss that the first time around? But I get it. Or I'll even chuckle and laugh. I'm like, oh man, that was really funny. I missed it in the moment. I didn't really get the full essence of it in the moment. But then when I'm watching it, I'm like, that was really funny. That was really good.
Yeah. It's hysterical because like you'll laugh at yourself and I'll hear myself laughing at the same time sometimes when I'm watching it. And I'm like, yeah, that was really funny.
It is. So what are we chatting about today? What's
our immigrant children of color and growing up and how those experiences have shaped who we are.
Right? And I would even say to add to that, we were first generation Americans, immigrants growing up in the suburbs. Because I think that is it. We share similar experiences with other peers who have grown up with that label per se. But I think another subset is, kids who may have grown up like that, immigrants, first generation, maybe in an inner city, whereas we grew up in a suburb. And we were really, really the minority in that suburb. And
that minority is not celebrated at all or nurtured properly.
No, it definitely wasn't when we were growing up. Definitely wasn't when we were growing up. But what do you feel are like the biggest, I don't want to say takeaways, but what have you learned about yourself looking back, right, at that experience? Because I remember when I first appeared on your podcast, and I was nervous. I told you I was nervous because I was like, everyone's coming on here to talk about Sunne-Ryse slip, and my experiences weren't. I had good friends, but they weren't all like things I wanted to remember. So what was like when you think of yours? Like, what was your journey like? And
I reflect on it a lot, and I connect the conversations that I have with Skiawa and sometimes with you. In that it was a really hard line to be living in because you're constantly trying to struggle to be for me, I had to be struggling to be Americanized and go for the American dream, and that's capitalism, make money and prestige for the family, and also hide all the family problems and stuff, because back then our family, you never talk about problems. You never expose anything that's going on in your family, any issues, whatever. Everything was always no, you don't talk about it with them. It's they're the other and we're secluded and everything. And then you have, then you go to school and then I have to put a different face on. I have to turn, my mask and be, an outgoing student, be involved in the activities and just hide everything at home and keep trying to strive for that American dream. And it's a hard juxtaposition, and also the racism that's also there, because I'll see racism in Ronkonkoma and then I'll be accepted in CI, and I just never understood why Ronkonkoma was all white and then CI was all mixed at that point. Until I spoke to Skiavo and he broke it down to me, where he's like, no, I worked in real estate and they told us to steer, you know, the minorities and the Blacks and the Asians to Central Islip and all the other, like Levittown, I think he said, and maybe like Wyandanch, Brentwood, like those were the ones that they blocked off in the grid. You steer all of those people there and you keep all of these white. And he said it in my last podcast where he's like, yeah, like Long Island is one of the most segregated places in probably the country.
It is.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't, not just the most, like one of the most segregated, but it has, you know, some of the most racist issues that we don't talk about, because people are, for some people, they're happy to be living there, right? Because the term Long Island just creates this one, you know, this kind of feeling of like, oh, I'm living in this place, right?
Yeah.
This place is upper echelon, this kind of luxurious place where other people want to live.
Yep.
But to your point, the experience for a lot of people of color, their vision was that, their goal was to give that to their children, but the experience wasn't always like that. It's funny, I want to go back to a point that you were talking about with regards to keeping the private business at home. And to me, one of the things, right, that my parents, it was funny that they would say is like, you know, you can't, if you share certain things, we don't know how other people are going to perceive this. And they didn't want other people in their house, in their business, right? It was cultural in a sense where it was like, yeah, we don't trust, because they have an ulterior motive why they want to come in here and make decisions about Black families or Asian families or Latinx families, right? Their intention isn't, and that's what was taught to me, right? So it was we don't talk about what's happening in our home, but we don't talk about it because of this reason. So it was always like, I always looked at people with a bit of a jaded eye.
Yeah, you were looking at them like, can I trust you? Are you going to go against me? Are you going to attack me? It was always that guarded look, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. But I think too, being in Long Island, you know, and I don't want to say it wasn't all bad, right? Like we had great experiences, we had great friendships, and we had wonderful opportunities, but I don't think we talk enough about the microaggressions that a lot of people of color experienced, because it was almost like you should just be happy to be here.
Yeah.
Right? Not that our parents, my father wasn't in corporate America working for, you know, as an accountant, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and your parents owned their own business. It wasn't that we deserved to be there because our parents had the wealth to actually allow us to live there. It was kind of like, well, we allowed you to come here.
Yeah. You should be happy that you're there. Just stay quiet.
Yes.
Stay quiet and don't like disturb the peace, basically.
Don't disturb the peace. My parents were always disturbing the peace, which is like, I don't want to be seen, but you guys are out here like protesting again.
Oh, really? So they really were doing all of that stuff?
Oh, my parents were very, very vocal. My parents were not, they weren't, so it's funny because you said like, you know, the assimilation thing. My parents looked at Long Island, being in America, as an opportunity for my brothers and I to kind of, I don't want to say receive what we deserve, but they knew who they were. Like they never doubted who they were as intelligent, bright people in the world.
Yeah. And what's the backstory of how did they come here and what's their nationalities?
Oh, yes. So we're Trinidadian. So my entire family's from Trinidad. I do have like further back from Trinidad, like my mom has some Irish in her and my father, Venezuela. But for the most part, we're Trinidadian. We're from the Caribbean. So anybody from the Caribbean knows that is like, everybody has to be a doctor and a lawyer. That was the upbringing, right? You were going to be a doctor or a lawyer. Like anything else.
That's Asian too. That's Asian culture. They always want you to be a doctor, lawyer, anything that makes a lot of money. It's all about.
Well, it was a lot of money, but it was also the title, right?
Yeah, so the title and prestige. It's like this prestige.
Right, because it was classism. It's like, no, you want to be above, and in order to be above, you need to have this title.
Yep, you need a diploma degree.
Yeah, Trinidad. My parents came in their early 20s, and they came to they were in Brooklyn. We were in Brooklyn.
Yeah, what part of Brooklyn?
Crown Heights. So we were in Brooklyn first before we moved to Long Island. And yeah, my dad got his degree. My mom got hers later after, but my dad got his degree and immediately he was tapped for corporate America. So he was a corporate accountant for many, many years, like even up till he retired a few years ago. But when I was, that whole life and experience was, my parents were like, no, you're not going to tell us I don't deserve to be here. Not at all. No. My father was like, I'm leaving my house every morning to drive into the city and I have on a suit and a tie and a shirt. You're not going to disrespect my children, whatever. And then my mom came up behind him and was like, well, you're not going to disrespect any of us, whether we're wearing a suit and tie or whether we're wearing jeans that don't fit. Like, so they both were very strong. Strong. The word we use in our community, they were very militant.
Oh, that's exactly what me and Sciawa just said too.
Yeah, my parents. Oh yeah, my parents were very like, I don't know if you know, the secretaries at Andrew T. Murrow School, they like knew my mom's voice over the phone.
Really?
Oh yeah, because she didn't play. At least once a week, she was calling and checking somebody. She's like, oh no. She's like, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Oh no, she's like, no, I want to meet with that teacher. What teacher told my kid they couldn't be anything? Oh, nope. I want to meet with them next week. They were like, oh, Mrs. Scott, it's so nice to hear from you again. She's like, yep, again.
Yeah.
Again, every week from elementary school all the way to the high school. So my parents were like, it was funny because nobody knows. I may have said this before. My mom, before MLK was a national holiday, my mom kept us home from school.
Really?
She called the school and she said, I dare you to mark them absent. She's like, my children are not absent. We are observing Martin Luther King's birthday.
Oh my God, that's
like
awesome.
that was the upbringing, right? So they were very, very, very militant, to say the least.
And how did that shape you? And how did you feel about the way she was protecting you guys?
I don't think I don't think my brothers and I were ever embarrassed. Because they had just ingrained it in us from very, very young. Like when Roots came out, my parents, we watched Roots. Like that was what you did. Like they were extremely pro knowledge of self.
Good. Yeah.
In our home, right? And they knew that where they brought us to be raised, right? They could have stayed in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But they knew bringing us to Long Island came with a lot of things that they kind of had to teach us along the way. And so it was like, Linda, it was just a part of life. Like I didn't have a choice. But it definitely shaped how I live my life now. It definitely shaped how, the activism work that I do, whether through my organizations, and my commitment to ensuring that marginalized communities are seen.
Yeah. I definitely think being there has helped you see all the aspects of it, from Long Island culture to Brooklyn, then now New Jersey. Like you empathize with people and have that compassion and know how they feel.
Oh yeah. And it's funny because in the work that I do as a social emotional trainer, nonprofit organization, consultant, though I'm always looking to help people who want to help communities that experience marginalization, helping them to understand how you help or how you serve, whether it's in education at the schools, whether it's your nonprofit. You have to have the ability to see people. If you don't have the ability to see someone and you want to help them, it's a waste of time because you're not understanding what help they need. Yeah,
exactly. And I know when you see people, you can just completely read them. In like 2 seconds. Well, you and your husband can totally see it in 2 seconds.
Yeah, we do. But it's so much fun because it's a joy for me now. It's a joy when I stand up in a room, because it's funny, I do use all of my life experiences. Matter of fact, I was doing a training in Chicago for a school earlier last month. And, one of the participants, they brought up social emotional learning curriculum. And, well, I guess the person was implying that certain communities need this curriculum more than others.
Oh,
Yeah.
Let me speak about that.
And it was funny because I tried to bring it back. I didn't want it to be personal. I didn't want to jump on the person because it was an honest impression, right?
Yeah.
And I basically told him, I said, well, I grew up in the suburbs of Long Island. And I grew up with a lot of people that didn't look like me, who were doing a lot of things, right? And had access to a lot of things. So the assumption that children who live in a particular type of environment are the only ones who need extra support about socializing and their emotional needs, I said, that's completely false.
Yeah, completely
false. Like somehow if you grew up in the suburbs, mysteriously,
you're good.
You're not engaging in risk-taking behavior. Say what? That who?
Yeah, those risk behaving things are always coming at us.
Always. It just means that some of the kids in the suburbs, they have more access to high-end risk-taking behaviors.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And then just hide it all.
That part.
Yep.
That part. Well, what about you? Like, what do you feel like when you think of your parents? Like, how did they navigate for you that whole transition? Because you talked about the feeling going from Sunne-Ryse up to Ronkonkoma. Like, were they even cognizant of it?
No,
Oof.
not one bit. So I come from a very, very traditional Chinese family. So I came here when I was 3 years old. So my sister's 3 years older than me, and my brother's 5 years older than me. So we originally moved here and we lived in West Babylon for a little bit. So I think we lived there for, I don't know, a year. I don't know the timeline, but we lived there for a little bit. And then we moved over to Central Islip. And their main focus was really like survival and to make money and to, live the American dreams, to make as much money as possible, and then push all of their kids to be straight A students and, just make a lot of money. I'm not really like, obviously most Asian families always want them to be like doctors or lawyers or whatever. But I think the main one thing that I remember was mostly make a lot of money.
Make money.
Make money, and then you can help the family or, bring that prestige and honor to the family. But they were just so absorbed in just money.
Yeah.
But then my father was also more into, I think, self-serving himself, so he kind of raised the household very militant, where everything was his rules. And if you even question him, you'd be met with violence and lectures and being put down and degraded. And so like my daily life coming home was like, I don't know what kind of person I'm going to meet at the door. I don't know what kind of like bipolar schizophrenic personality I'm going to meet. So that's the kind of life I would go to every single day.
Did he ever get diagnosed with that?
No, I'm just looking at it all and dissecting it all now.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Retrospect, that could
have retrospect, I'm looking at it now, and other research and podcasts, I hear other people talking about their fathers, and I was like, wow, that sounds exactly how my father was. So as he would drink sometimes, then it would get worse, obviously, because then he became more violent. But I would remember, like, it was like you just had to follow rules. You got to get your straight A's. And so since I wasn't academic as good as my brother and sister, even though I probably was, like above average student or whatever, but above average is not acceptable in my family. It has to be straight A pluses. So that was already implemented of my head of like, I'm not good enough to be able to succeed in this Asian family. So what am I going to do? Like, the only thing I can do is that I'm really good at is art. And I remember my dad saying to me one time, he's like, well, good thing you have art because you're not going to be able to mount to anything else.
Really?
Yeah. So you have the 3 kids who are like in a prison. And then you have my mother who was also a prisoner too, because he controlled everything. So like I felt like we were just all in this like immigrant prison family.
Wow.
And it was us who we had to keep everything quiet, not say anything, and then going to school and trying to do the best we can.
Yeah, and to portray the exact opposite, because you were, that's crazy, Linda, because if you think about it, you were competing with, man, you were competing against the stereotypes when you went into the world, right? That you had to be a certain way, you had to look a certain way, while still feeling like people wanted you to assimilate to a more Eurocentric white American, you know, culture and experience.
Yeah.
And then when you go home, there was this other experience of feeling stifled and trapped.
Yeah. And then you have to obey. Like there's a difference between an American dream and being free to do everything and succeed, and you can whatever, but then you be fed at home, don't trust anybody.
Oh, yeah.
And obey and listen to everything I said, and everything you think that you were actually questioning me on is not allowed and you're wrong. And it's bad. And he'll also flip it and manipulate it of like, why would you do that on purpose to get me mad? And now basically I'm going to have to, you know, punishment or whatever, you know? So it was a lot.
It's so crazy, you know, just to even tie it to, and I'm like, I'm sorry that you had to experience that.
Yeah.
Like really from my heart. I mean, I know some of your story when we were together in high school.
Yeah.
Because you shared it when we were younger, not everything. But that is one, I'm grateful for you today and to see your beauty and resilience through it all, because I think you are hope for someone to be able to say, okay, I don't have to drown in this.
Yes.
So I'm grateful for that. But I think about, you know, these governors that have shipped people in planes to other states. Do you know what I mean? People who had no idea why they were getting on these planes. And I just think about like our experiences, and even today, the suppression or the oppression of the immigrant experience, right? That feeling of like feeling like an other, like you don't belong anywhere.
Yeah. And that's how I feel a lot of times. I'll always feel eyes on me. You know, and I'll always see like a judgment. Like I think I was at the supermarket the other day, and just this little boy just kept staring at me.
Oh yes, I've experienced that.
And I'm like, is he looking at me because he's never seen an Asian person? You know, like I'm like looking, I'm like, oh.
I've had this, you know, and it's so funny, right? Because given our how we have to walk through the world, right? With that, I'm going to rephrase that. How we've had to experience walking through the world. It's interesting because I experienced the same thing, right? And in the moment, I start thinking to myself, well, are they looking at my mole? Are they looking at my shaved head, right? Right, because I immediately don't want to assume, oh, they're just looking at me because I'm Black and they're not accustomed to seeing a Black person. But I think how many people in the world don't have to do that?
Yeah.
They don't have to process, oh, why is that person looking at me? You know, or the process of looking, why someone's looking at me is something very, very generic and surface.
And that's funny because I used to have a mole right here. And I used to always feel like people were looking at me because of my mole. And then eventually I didn't realize like technology had changed. So they wouldn't have to like cut it off. They just lasered it off. So I eventually got it off because I just felt like there was something that people kept looking at me and I didn't feel comfortable with it. So that was one of them too, like my mole. So I was like, let me remove it because it's another thing that makes me more self-conscious when I'm out, because we're empathetic. So like, I always feel people's energies. When I'm in the room, like I can just tell there's certain eyes and, you know, I don't hear the voices, but I can just tell that they're thinking and judging me, you know?
I know for me, it was attending, what helped me through all of that was attending a historical Black college, right? Like for me, not feeling like, always feeling like the other,
Yeah.
or always feeling like eyes were on me.
Mhm.
When I went to historical Black college and I saw people who look like me, but from all over the world,
Yeah.
it completely gave me confidence, right? That even to this day, when I walk in a room, if
Yeah.
I am, which I often am sometimes, if I walk into a room, um, I don't feel there's a way that I am about myself that's like, no, I deserve to be here.
Mhm.
Even
Mhm.
if you don't think I do,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know I do.
Yeah.
I know I do. And I don't have anything to prove to you.
And that's a beautiful confidence nurturing place to go to
Yeah.
start, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's so, I think this conversation is really beautiful, and I think it's going to help a lot of people who've grown up the same way that we do,
Mhm.
but who navigate life with all of these different things on our shoulders,
Yeah.
right? The stereotypes of, what people say about our race or our culture. Because ironically, I didn't even talk about this. There was a difference sometimes between being African American and being Caribbean American, right?
Yes.
That,
Yes. Mhm.
because I actually got teased sometimes. They would say, people would say, "Oh, you're you're a coconut head, or you're a coconut monkey," or stuff like that.
Mhm.
Or, "Oh, you're really from Africa." And it was interesting because we've been taught to, because we were always considered an other,
Mhm.
taught to attack other, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you experience that within your community as well, like, is there a divide between certain individuals, and you're like, well, even though we're the same, you're an other.
Yeah. And the funny thing with that is that there is racism within everyone's culture as well. And one of those racism within all of our cultures too is that the Asians would be like, oh, if you get a tan, you look too dark. But
Mm,
they'll say you look black. So to
really?
them, for traditional old school Asians, they're like, oh, you're too dark, you're so dark, you look too black. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, this is America and everyone likes to tan. Like, we like to tan. Like, it has nothing to do with your racism and all that stuff. But it's
Yeah.
also it's also in the black community too, right? Isn't there like um
Yeah,
fights where like light
colorism.
skin, dark
Oh
skin
yeah.
have like, right? So it's the same
Yeah,
thing with Asian
colorism.
cultures.
Yeah, colorism has been, and it's so unfortunate because when we know the historical roots of it, it is not something to necessarily be proud of or to,
No,
right?
it's
I remember it was so
because they
funny.
were
I'll tell you one
because they're
thing.
raped, and that's why they're lighter. You know what I mean?
That's
Like
what I was,
that is why I'm lighter because someone raped in the plantation, and this is why our skin is lighter.
yeah, it's funny, but I remember the first day my mom told me that. I came home, and I was upset. Um, and not because of what the person teased me about. They did
Mhm.
not believe that I was Black, right? So they said, "Oh, well, your hair is too long and it's too curly,
Mhm.
and you're light skinned, so you must have something else in you." I was like, "No, like, come to my house. I'm Black. I'm right." And I'm having this argument, and I went home and I was upset. And my mom said, "Sweetheart, this is what you have to tell people next time they say that.
Mhm.
You tell them, you want this curly hair, you want this light skin. Guess what? My ancestors were raped for me to look like this. If that's something you want to be proud of,
Yeah.
then have at it. Knock yourself out."
Mhm.
And I remember when she said it, my mom never shied away from
The
the
truth.
no,
That's the
no,
truth.
no,
Mhm.
no. I remember when my brothers, one Christmas, my parents got my brothers these 10-speed bikes, and they were so happy because, riding around in Long Island, you could ride to your friend's house. We didn't need cars back then
Yeah,
because we were
that's what you
riding our
do.
bikes
Yep.
everywhere.
Yep.
And I remember my mom I didn't know it then, but my mom had the talk with my brothers, and they weren't even driving, they were riding bikes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this whole thing now that we talk about the talk
Yeah.
that Black families do with their sons and their daughters when you're going to learn how to drive,
Yeah.
my mom had the talk with my brothers riding their bike.
Yeah. You can even be, I mean, like from stories that I hear from my friends, you can just be walking on the street, having a McDonald's sandwich and get arrested. You're like, I just came from McDonald's and I'm eating. How are you going to arrest me for robbery or crime or whatever it is that you're trying to frame me on just because I'm Black? Like, you know?
Oh yeah. So she never shied away from that conversation. She never sugarcoated those conversations with us. So when she told me, like, the next time that person makes fun of you,
so what? So was that person like, what race was the other person that was making fun of you?
It was a group. It was like a girl who was Latino and a Black girl.
Okay.
Yeah. And she was like, you know, sometimes you got to educate your own, right? And it's not a matter of looking down, but it's really us helping one another to understand, like, we're in this together.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not you and then me. It's actually, we're fighting the same fight.
You're fighting the same fight. And this is a great podcast to have. So then people understand our experience in that environment, how we grew up and how it shaped us. And also, like, the fact, you know, our parents, crazy as it may seem, and I will respectfully exclude your dad from this statement. Out of respect, right? Because we're not gonna make any excuses for that joker. No.
But I think our parents did the best they could with what they had.
Yeah.
Right? They were fed a narrative, and they figured, oh my gosh, our kids need to be here because we want better for our kids.
Yep.
And in order for our kids to have better, we got to do all of this stuff. We have to teach them all this stuff. We have to help them be all of this stuff. And now I look at my mom and I'm like, you know, heck, I look at myself. I'm a mother. I'm like, I always tell people, I said, one day my kid's going to have to be on a couch talking about my mom, look at what my mom did. And I'll be like,
yeah.
Did I do all of that? I thought I was a good mom. Right. But one day our kids will be talking about us, Linda, like, my mom did the right thing when I brought home my homework.
The funny story is that one of my really good friends who I always said, like, she's like my mentor, my friend also, and I'm trying to get her on this podcast, but she's not ready yet, but she will. But one of the great things is that I did a Basquiat, like, collage, like, remix for her son, right? And it's her, you know, plus, you know, her stepson. And they both came to my house because I love the reveal and I love the reaction I get when people see it, you know. So they both came to my house, picked it up, and we had a great conversation. And I was like, telling her son, I was like, I would love to have you on the podcast, because him and his friends also have a podcast. So I had him on the podcast, and it was so beautiful to hear him talk about his, you know, his mom and his stepmom. He's like, no, I don't even see her as a stepmom, but the accolades and the respect and the beautiful things that he was saying about them was just astonishing. And I loved it. And I felt like a proud aunt because I always hear these stories about him. And now he's graduated and he's got his, like, doctorate, I think. And he wants to be, like, I don't know, he's like a mad scientist. So he's like, you know, Nigerian, but he's like, obviously they push him too, like, you know, be a doctor. And so he's got all of these, like, beautiful abilities, and it was just beautiful to see. So that was a good one.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't sitting on a chair and complaining. He was, like, you know, being respectful and saying all these good things about his parents.
Yeah. I think when I look back on it, even with everything, we were supposed to be where we were during the time that we were supposed to be there. And we're better for it now. Yeah. We're better for it.
Exactly. So that's why I love that I'm finding my voice, because eventually I'll be able to help others, you know, realize if I can make it through the shit show, you can flourish as well.
I always say, if we're still breathing,
exactly,
we've actually already made it.
Exactly. I'm breathing and I'm broadcasting.
Yeah. Listen, if excuse me, if you woke up and you're breathing, you made it.
You made it. I'm grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, it may not always feel good. It may not always look good or sound good,
Yeah.
but you made it. We made it. We got a second chance. Today was a second chance.
Yeah.
You didn't get it right yesterday. Guess what?
We can make it right here. It's a brand new day.
It's a brand new day. And
Yeah.
my hope and prayer is that whoever hears our conversation, whether it's a young person, navigating what it feels like to be a first,
Mm-hmm.
right? That first generation American feeling,
Yeah.
that they realize they don't have to lose who they are.
Mm-hmm.
They should allow the experience that they're in to help who they are blossom and flourish even more.
Yeah, and that was like one of the things we had mentioned before, where we were like kind of stuck in the middle of like feeling like we have to do all of these, accolades and, structured things and getting the good professional things. And then the other side of like, we want to be free and be happy and like, just do whatever we want to, sit in this
Yeah.
like beautiful place. So it was a struggle for a long time to get to that place of acceptance. And I love that you got to that place when you finally were like, you know what? I'm just gonna collect everything that I've been through and then do you, where you started like promoting yourself and your website, and this is you. And you can help everybody with all of your experiences.
Yeah. And I think that's why we have the experiences. Like if we're really cognizant to this idea that there is a higher power, that nothing is by chance, at least that's how I live my life. That's how I get through. I get through by understanding nothing's happening to me.
It's happening for you.
Oh, right. We could stay there all day. As challenging and as frustrating as it is, right? There's that part of us that knows, man, who am I becoming inside of this challenge, this turmoil, this situation? And I always like to preface that with, I don't want to diminish people who have been through extreme trauma, right? Because people could hear that and be like, oh, well, you don't know what I've been through. You know, like, I respect the fact that there are a lot of hard situations that have happened in people's lives, and we don't get to brush it over and be like, oh, well, that's the way the world works. No, actually, we get to acknowledge that what happened to somebody is effed up. The question is, when we start our healing process, how do we turn that effed up situation into something that like takes us further, but also helps us to be a blessing to somebody else?
Yeah, like my growing up, there was always hope. So when you said hope, that was the thing that kept me going, is that I had the hope and the wherewithal.
What was your hope in? I'm just curious.
Well,
or was it in anything?
I think it was the hope for that this can't stay like this and it could be better. Like it's got to get better. It can't be like this. This can't be my life. So I think I always had that instinctual feeling of hope that I just want something better. And I felt like my life was worth it to not either end it or end someone else's life. Because I could have easily, because everyone has like the dualities of their personality, the good and the bad and the yin and yang. So like, if I was any other sort of person going through my experiences, I could have easily gone the dark side.
Yeah.
Either end my life and his life.
Yeah.
But I think I always was like, no, one, I don't want to go to jail. Two, my life is worth more than going to jail. So I'm going to have to figure out a way out of this, because I don't know. I just still had a love for life. Thank God.
Yeah.
Did
you see anything like, so you had hope, and was it sparked by seeing something on television or seeing friends or seeing the idea of something better, even if you weren't experiencing it? Like, what was the hope connected to?
Probably, I would assume it would be like TV, because like you watch TV and you'll watch all these shows of these like beautiful American families with the white picket fence and the husband who works, and the beautiful children. So I also think I probably also daydream about having the fantasy family and life and the freedom that comes from it. So I think I probably was always fantasizing it. But I think art also saved me, because at least I was able to channel my pain into art. So even though I can't speak it, it's on paper, it's a painting, it's a sculpture, it's something tangible that I can release that anger onto. So that helped me also.
I think too, that's such a cultural gift. And when I mean cultural, I mean not to any one specific culture, but to each person's individual culture, right? Like that there's so many other mediums of expression that when we tap into what is the best way for me to communicate this, create such beautiful tapestry of music, art, dance, food, clothes. And I wouldn't be surprised if, and you probably know this, that there's an artist probably somewhere in your lineage, in your genealogy, right? And that beautiful expression of art came to like heal you when in those moments when you didn't have
the voice.
Voice.
Yeah, exactly. It has to come from, the generational of it. Someone had some sort of, artistic ability. And like now I accept it as like certain superpowers I have now. Like Will Smith would say, like he grew up in a very, hard, his father was very militant, so I see it as now I have like superpowers where I can be more empathetic and I can read the room and I can read someone's, energy and all that stuff. So now like I am proud of who I am now, that I can do all of these things and be able to have conversations with people also where now they feel comfortable with me and be able to open up. So now it's translating into these podcasts, and it's a beautiful thing that people come on and are able to share their stories, and every story will help and every story will heal. One story at a time.
One story at a time.
One story at a time.
I love that.
Yeah.
One story will help and one story will heal.
Yeah.
That is the gift, right? If we don't allow ourselves to be consumed, we actually find the gift.
And I'm always trying to find the lessons in everything that I'm doing, even if it's bad. I'm like, well, what's the lesson here? Like, what am I supposed to be getting from this? And also, one of the things I like to make sure people understand that helped me was that when I was going through all of these things, I was reading a book with Anthony Robbins. And one of the things he pointed out was that you need to change also your perspective and how you're thinking about this, and not only think about your singular problem. Think about everything else too, and what can you do in this situation? Instead of just constantly be like, they did this to me, they did this to me. Because really, if I just kept saying they did this and this is the way I am because I went through this, and I'm going to sit and either be an alcoholic or not have a good career or be work, like if I just absorbed and just stayed at they did this to me, that's the way I am, and still sit there, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I still had to push myself to go after things that were of value to me, to be able to keep fighting.
And it's so true that you say that, because even this whole conversation is really about our upbringing as like first generation Americans, or coming from immigrant families. It's the point you're making is that we too, right? How do we perceive even that, right? Even that title that we wear, right? We could either perceive it as, oh, well, people aren't going to accept us. People aren't going to appreciate what we bring to the party culturally. People aren't going to, acknowledge our presence or give us visibility in certain spaces. We could take that perspective, or we can take the perspective of, well, I could wait for somebody else to do it for me, or I can do it for myself. I can wait.
And also being a woman is also, like add that to, growing up. That's a big contention in Asian culture too, because they're super traditional. I like in other, cultures where the woman's voice is not important, and they just need to, just listen to their husband and do whatever the husband says.
And look at you out here, all loud and proud.
Yeah, and like they would just teach us to, just be silent, just to be, quiet and be obedient, be the good girl, that's like,
whatever that is.
I think I cringe every time I hear that.
Whatever that is.
Like, I think I can't stand that.
I don't even know what that means. Like, what are we talking about? Like, what does that mean?
Oh, that's to listen and be obedient.
And well, just, good thing we didn't. Good thing we didn't.
Oh my God.
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually. So is there anything else that you're working on that we need to tell the people?
Other than the couples conference that's coming up in October, my husband and I, so if anybody wants to join us in Jersey to talk through relationship, you're in a, you don't even have to be in a rough patch, just in a place where you just want to level up your relationship. That's what we do. So they can check us out on IG at _blacksmiths, BLAQSMITHS. And DM us, and all the information will be there as well.
I love it. What's the date on that?
The 14th and 16th, 14th through 16th. So it's a nice 14th. Weekend, October 14th through 16th. So if anyone's in the tri-state area, it's right across, we're not far in Jersey, a few minutes out of New York City. And it'll be fun. It'll be fun to connect with other couples. And
this is your first one, right?
It's our first one in many, many years. Like, we used to do a lot of them like 4, 5, 6, 7, long time ago, which were really smaller. They were more day events. This one is an overnight. So it should be interesting, because we wanted to give couples some time alone to process. Like, you have sessions and we have fun.
And like immerse yourself in this healing process. And
immerse yourself in the process, right? As opposed to going home and then you're distracted by family and kids. Nope, you kind of carve out this time for the whole weekend. So I'm hoping people join. They could also check out my other podcast, like, what I love, my baby that you helped me to birth, a DopeChick's spiritual journey podcast, talking to inspirational women about their spiritual journeys, like how they get from where they were to where they are now, and their connection to something higher and bigger than themselves. Well, number one is always communication. But we usually I'll say one thing that we usually tell couples: slow to take offense, slow to give offense. That's like the biggest takeaway. When couples get that when you're communicating with someone and you don't know their style, you don't understand it, our natural inclination is to do what? Take offense.
Yep.
Right? Yep. Oh, it's what you said before. You're doing this to me.
Yeah. And I would say, what the fuck?
You made me feel this way. You, as opposed to pausing and really asking yourself, how are we communicating? Is this person speaking Spanish and I'm speaking French? And we keep bumping heads, but we think we're saying the same thing, but we're speaking a completely different language. Yeah.
And that's usually the majority of the problem with everybody, just because they're coming with their baggage and they have their perception about things, and another person's coming with their perspective, and they're like, well, you did this to me and I feel like this, but really it's because of something that happened in your past. So
you're never arguing. I tell people all the time, you're never arguing about the dishes, right? So people are like, oh, we argue about money. We argue about sex. We argue about the kids. We argue about this. No. You're never, ever arguing about those things.
No.
You are arguing about something completely different that neither one of you have taken the time to like really look back and address.
Yeah. And it's usually a lot of the time is also like a love language of like, okay, well, I'm not feeling love because you don't do the dishes. You don't care about me or something like that. It's always some sort of underlining childhood trauma, probably.
And it's something underlying from the past, right? Like you have expectations and this person doesn't meet your expectations. So now all of a sudden they're not meeting your expectations because they don't really love you, or they don't care about your feelings, or no, they're not meeting your expectations because they may not even know you have those expectations.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to be a great weekend. I really hope everyone comes out and joins us. And like I said, they can check us out at _blacksmiths with a Q, BLAQSMITHS.
Love it.
And yeah. Are you doing any events? What's happening? I thought we were talking about some stuff before. What's happening?
What is happening? I am on a journey to heal myself.
Okay.
So no, I'm not doing any events.
Okay.
Because that's external and I'm not ready for external. I feel like I have a lot of healing to do mentally, soulfully. And so that's what I'm working on. So I think I just need to sit in my own shit.
Yeah, listen, you can't really serve out until you've managed within. So
yeah. I feel like before I was always doing tons of busy stuff. You know what I mean? Like I was constantly keeping my schedule busy. And then I realized, in COVID that now I have time to think about everything instead of just ignoring and just being busy and never having a moment to think about me. So I'm just sitting in my own stuff and just healing myself. I feel like it's the most important thing I can do right now.
And it is the most important thing.
Yeah. And then with that, I'll be able to, I think I should work on the book would be the first thing I would have to do.
I don't know. I was kind of going to say that, but I figured, let me just.
I feel like that has to be something that has to happen. The notable quotable book has to happen because that'll be more related to art and lessons and quotes. So I feel like those two things need to happen.
Yes, and we do need to start working on the notable quotables. That's a must.
Yeah.
But I think the book can be healing.
I think it will be.
The writing of it can be cathartic and healing for you.
Yeah, because that's what I've always done. I've always put my pain into art in whatever form that is, from, poetry to paintings to whatever. And this book will be it. So I have to just delve into it. I just don't know where to start. So I haven't started. So it's just formulating in my head. But eventually I just need to get it down on paper or a canvas or something. But that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to heal myself.
Yeah. Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, please. I love your suggestions.
Just use your phone. So don't overthink the writing process, right?
Yeah.
I've written 2 books. Don't overthink it. One of the greatest inventions that we've been blessed to have in our time is cell phones and laptops.
Yeah.
Literally, you open your cell phone and you have a thought that you want to add to the book. You just voice record, potential chapter, healing myself.
Yeah.
Point number 1, and just no periods, no parentheses, no exclamation points. And before you know it, in a month, you've collected all of this content for your book.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I have little notes in my iPhone, and then I've written out memories and stories in my Google Docs. So I have that going. I have the notes going. And I might just have to, print it all out and spread it all out in front of me. And really, that's probably the entire book right there. Like it's probably done. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say it's probably finished already.
I mean, really, the way we are, we probably think more that we need more, but we don't. So really, the book's already written. It's just in my computer, in my walls of my paintings, and in my phone. So it just has to all just get printed out, laid in front, and I just have to collage it together, really. So really, okay, fine, the book is done.
That's what I was waiting for you to say. Hello.
Right. I get it. The book is done. I just need to assemble it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that'll be the healing too.
That will be the healing. And that will be the freedom to my 40s also.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. All right. It's such a pleasure every single time.